You have an exhibition coming on the 7th of April, which is your birthday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So please, like, tell us about this exhibition, about the history, and link it to your story if you can for us.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it sort of all kind of started, right? Like when you're about like 12, 13, here in the States, in your schooling, you learn about, like ancient India, it's right. So as they go through like all of these different things, right? And of course, it ends up touching a bit on like religion as well and things like that. And so, when I was 12 or 13 and I was at that year, I opened up the textbook and, our surname, our family surname is Sudra. And so, to open up the textbook, to be kind of instructed on like this ancient India and to learn about the caste system, and to see Sudra as my name that I've written down on things and entered into, government paperwork and such. I didn't know the history, right? I didn't know about the caste system. I didn't know about anything, right? I'm out here living in Los Angeles. We didn't really have any Desi community. We were pretty much out there on our own and my immediate family. And so, I started to dig a little bit and I was irritated because, the textbook was the textbook, right? So I didn't expect the textbook to give me a hug or nothing like that. But it really, what it said was we were dark-skinned laborers, and that bothered me because, growing up, like I've done school projects on my mom's diaspora story like many times, right? Anytime I could talk about like the family story, like I would, right? And so yes, we are Sudras. We could trace it back to the Mahar tribe, right? To the region that's what is now known as Gujarat. But in the early, 1900s, being a part of British imperialism, my family was used basically to build the East African Railroad. And they didn't take high caste folks to do that. Why would they, right? They had their life made. And so my family saw it as an opportunity, like many folks do. And the reason why they migrate is because life could be potentially better. They didn't even really know if it could be better. It could be potentially better. But because of the given status where they were living, they took that chance. They took that opportunity, right? So, and there's a lot of us out there, right? There's a lot of that East African Desi community. But, I see how because of the way that the British positioned Desi folks, I could see why the indigenous Africans, Ugandans, East Africans would have some beef with that. Like it wasn't that they were subjugated in their own land. And also, like, I'm a product of American history, so I know a little something about like ethnicities getting pitted against each other for the benefit of the white man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when I learned that story, I was like, oh, this feels familiar. I had learned about the riots in Watts and how Korean storefront owners were targeted because they were given more privileges, they were given leases, they were given opportunities, right? Jobs. And so, I don't put it past folks that when they were ready to start an uprising that they were targeted, that Korean folks were targeted. And so it makes sense to me to understand why Desi folks were targeted in Uganda as well. Very, very similar stories, ironically, or not ironically. It's per history, right? but so, right. So like, all right. So like I'm a 12-year-old and I'm learning all this stuff and, my mind is like exploding. Right. And I just sort of tucked it away. I tucked it under, I, kind of held on to it for a little bit. In 2008, 2007, I started, or at least a little bit before that, I started documenting. I started writing, right? Like I'm not a writer. I never got good grades in English class. Like it was never really my thing, but I just knew what the history book said was incomplete. And I would look around for the story and I couldn't find it. The closest thing I could find was Mississippi Masala. And like, that's, Denzel and we got Sharita, like it's a good story, but it's not quite, like Sarita's family does hotels or motels, if I can recall correctly. And I remember my mom telling me like, oh yeah, some folks did that, but that wasn't us. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, I hear you. And Denzel, yeah, my dad don't touch Denzel, with a 10-foot pole. So it just wasn't enough, right? Like it wasn't enough. So I was like, okay, bet, like, let me start at least writing this history down. Then 2007, 2008 came and I moved to London for a little while to be with my family. And I ended up doing some recording of videos and interviews and such. And in my mind, I was recording it so that I could write it down later. But there's something about the screen, man. There's something about, seeing somebody speak it, feel it. All the communication that comes outside of just the spoken word, right? To see somebody shift in their chair when they're saying a certain memory, see your shade change just a bit, when you're recalling certain memories. That was big to me. So then I'm like, all right, do I have a documentary now? Do I need to learn about film? Do I need to try to figure out this, and that was, I had no idea, right? Years carry on, and I started. I was always writing poetry, but I was just like an emo kid that didn't share my feelings, and so I wrote them in my book. It was never like, I don't know. It was never something that I really thought about being performative about. I don't know when or where that shifted. I believe it probably shifted around the time that I was living in Oakland, and it was close to me because I was living in Oakland, but because of some injustices that were happening to Black folks living there, specifically by the hands of police, I started writing a little differently, not necessarily just about my feelings, but about other things as well, right? And so eventually the poems about my family came out. And I was like, man, so I got writing, I got videos, I got poems. And then I started painting, and I started drawing, and I started doing, I dabble, right? Like I do a lot of different things in a lot of different spaces and places. And it's been 13 years, dude. And I've just been sitting on all this work, and I'm finally going to kick this thing off, man. And put it all out there, whether it's writing or videos or poems or paintings. It's all going to be on display, very thoughtfully curated, so that somebody who might not know about this history, which isn't in the textbook, right? Mississippi Masala was a long time ago, right? Like folks don't really know that movie no more, right? So, and nobody knows was the Idi Amin movie. It was the Last King of Scotland, right? And so, this history could be forgotten. And I'm determined to not only make a place for it in our social culture and everything like that, but because of how dirty the history textbook did me, I want to legitimize it as an academic subject to be studied, as something worthy of being in an art gallery, right, on walls, as opposed to just like up in my house or whatever, you know what I mean? And so there's a real intention here to not just tell the story, but to legitimize it as one that should be widely discussed and talked about and known. And so, yeah, it's going to be on April 7th. It's my birthday. The exhibition is titled Not Your Masi's Generation, because it does, all of my work really plays on, generations, and I've asked a lot of questions about how the elders feel about us as third generation folks, and it's not great. It's not super great, and so I want to tell that story, like, and I want to tell the story about how us, what I call a third generation, you know, we haven't done exactly as our folks have done and our grand folks have done. And part of that has been through intention. Part of that has been through coercion because we're in different lands, right? And interacting with different folks. And then part of that to me is sort of this willingness to tackle some of the more traumatic experiences that our family has gone through, and to sort of break that down, to heal, to attempt to heal from it, right? And so it's multifaceted and it's multi-complex, and you know, like it's big. It's about to be cool, man. I'm excited.
No, that sounds incredible. Thank you so much for that. That was so thorough and deep at the same time. Like, I really feel like there's so much just to go from that alone. We can have like an hour conversation just about those things, and we may do so.